Welcome everybody to Layer's custom views from scratch with Document View with Layer. I'm Silvia, the Director of Customer Success, and
I'm Georgios, Director of Customer Experience. We're basically here to help you with all your needs in regards to Layer. Silvia here will actually show us today how to kind of create a document view from scratch. It's a huge time saver because you can actually create right off the bat reports for all of your components just like on the fly. So it's a pretty handy tool. So without further ado, I'll pass the baton to Silvia to take us through building the document view from scratch.
thanks, Georgios. And this is the first part of, we will have more of these webinars because there's just too much to show and it would just be way too much. So let me log in. And fun tip, if you pin your document view, if you pin your project, it pops up on the top. So quickly I can go into that. And for if anyone's not familiar with Layer, Layer can take many different types of project information and organize it in our app in one place for you to access. So as I flip through some of these templates that we have, you can see that we're talking about data sheets, site observations, and FF&E is really strong with a lot of our users, so product specs. We have these templates, and inside each template, when you load it in, we have a document view already set up for you to start editing to help you jumpstart the process a little. So let me close that because today we'll be talking about document view, and product specs is a great place to start with that. In the upcoming sessions, we're going to touch upon filters, photos, which comes very handy in site observations, company styles, and creating templates. But today we'll do the basic building blocks of document view. So we have one category here called product specs, and I have created a lot of these different templates, or I've loaded in all these different templates, as you can see here. They're all representing the same information that you have in your table, and I'll show you how to access these document view specific templates that we've built. So if I go to create a new view, and the view that we'll be building from scratch here, I'm going to select document. We'll touch upon document styles in a future webinar, so I'll leave that blank for now. We don't need to work with that. And when I click create view, you can see all the different templates that we've built and which I have loaded here. I'll click to those in a second, but we're going to start from scratch from this one, which is completely blank, as you can see. So these different layouts are all preloaded for you to use. And then when I click over here, you can see I have some settings. These are more related to the view and the category itself. So you can change the name of your document view and add some filters or sorts onto the data that is referenced in the category and change your document styles. Over here, we have the three dots to review more options as well. And these page settings is where you can change the size of your page. We have multiple sizes loaded. So one easy thing you can do is if you have a template that you like, I will duplicate it, then rename it to landscape. And then change the page settings here. So I'm changing my orientation to landscape, and the same data now, you can see has quickly just adjusted to this landscape view. So I really like the flexibility of that. The data you don't control here, but the page layout is all set up for you to use. So your product table here, you can see that you have multiple elements and the information that relates to those elements we organize by fields. So when you go to your view, your elements become different pages. So each page and the fields related to it are shown up as different pages. If you click onto the text of that, you can see that you can scroll through all of them. So if you have a 100-page report, you can quickly navigate through that. And you can also search by starting to type. So that makes it a lot faster to look through everything. Change your zooming in. Maybe you want to check something closely. And then if you want to see the entire thing. So this is controlling the layout. So you'll see that some of the information will be pulled when you generate the report. So when you want to edit the fields that I was mentioning, when you click edit here, I'll do that again, this pencil. When you edit, you can see that we have all available fields. So what we were seeing before in your table view are now blocks that can be added to your document. And these are the existing ones from the template that have already been added. To lose your changes or just go back and save and hit publish. But it's nice to just regularly hit that so you don't accidentally click too fast and lose some of the work you've done.
99% of the times I have to change something. I change the category and I get this warning every time. I don't know if this is a single time that I actually hit the publish button.
Yeah, sometimes I hit like refresh too fast and yeah, and I'm like, oh no, I didn't hit publish.
I don't know.
Let's get into now the document view from scratch. So there are a lot of different elements here, and these are your building blocks. So header and footer are special containers that are placed in the header and footer location. When you click any element on your document view, you'll see that all of these settings for the item appear. I will hit publish to save that. So if you want to kind of see the layouts, you can load in a previous template and kind of play around with it by clicking around. And if you keep hitting this arrow button, it will take you to the larger container or item that is above it. It is pretty telling, like, 'cause I can see this as a 2-column container that holds an image here with different fields listed here. So let me go back to here. So that is your containers. Hit edit. And then I can add in static text, for example, your company name. You can load in a static image, and this can be your company logo. And then when you click this, it's not showing because it's too large. I'll make it a little smaller. One thing to note is that we have horizontal spacers and vertical spacers. So if I loaded in 3 images, and you can see when I'm loading them, the green line on the edge of the block is showing you that you're able to place it. I think it's intuitive. You'll realize that like you'll get red lines and green lines. So I'm just gonna load in some, and these existing images are pulling from your project already. So each container has a content direction, and everything is by default set to vertical. So the column equals vertical. And so when you drag things, it's easy to just stack them. When you put them in row, they go horizontally across. So when I'm set to row, I can add horizontal spacers. And if I select my container and I switch it to column, that horizontal spacer no longer appears, but I can add vertical spacers in. And similarly, when I set it to row, that vertical spacer disappears. So I'd say most of these you can drag and drop and play with. And it kind of makes sense how they work. I would say the vertical and horizontal spacer, this clarification helps a lot when using them, that it's based on the content direction.
Silvia, I see
Mhm.
you clicking a little bit on clicking on the containers border. Can you explain that a little bit? What you're doing there when you're switching between different containers?
You mean when I'm hovering?
Yeah, I see that you're hovering over, and then there's like an arrow that you're clicking to go to the next container.
Yeah. Let me publish to save this. So I'll show it here because there's more elements placed here. So hovering is how you can see the different elements, but another way is if I click it, I'm in notes and there's 2 buttons. They're actually quite small. I believe it's an arrow and a garbage can. Is that the one next to it, Georgios?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so the left one is the arrow. But when I click the arrow, it takes me to the container that was holding the notes. So it's kind of just like going up out of the, if you had like a lot of like tabs, like this is nested under this is nested under that. So if I click the arrow again, this container exists within this larger container, which exists within this 2-column container, which exists in this other container, in another container, in a root container, which we will break this down a little more in a different one to kind of give you some quick like tips away around like the best use cases for using containers and fields together. But I think if you come away from this understanding that containers will help you organize your data blocks, you can start playing around with it and finding your way. Okay, you can add your data without any containers, but then it becomes very unstructured. So that's why if you want like sections on your page, the containers will be very helpful. And then one thing, if you're going through your project and you see, for example, this cost here, this is just a layout. It's not editable in this way, but you can quickly access by, I'll do that again, by hitting this open element button all the way on the right of your toolbar. The toolbar is also, like if it's in the way, you can slide it around by these 4 buttons. But this open element button brings up this panel that you should be familiar with from working in your tables. And then you can find the unit cost here. And let's say the price changes to $9.50. That automatically updates here. So you're not editing the data in the layout, but it is available for you very easily, which I like a lot because it kind of lets you keep working with it very easily. You don't have to like jump around to a lot of different places. So also exporting your PDF is very important. So there's this button here. It's also available to you here. And when I press it, there's options for just this page if you wanted to check something. Maybe you've already exported your entire report, but you updated, for example, the price here. So you can just check that and export just that element. Or so I will hit export for the entire document. It's creating the report. And very soon, okay, great. So we have the report created successfully. This link lets you can share that link, and then when someone else clicks it, it will start the download for them. Or you can download the report here. So this option of generating the report, this gives you a little more control over what you want to generate. This would do the same thing, generate that full report. And those reports are stored here in Files, Reports tab. And you can see them here. You can also find the link, and or if you are working through your project, you have a lot of reports, just to delete the reports you don't need anymore. And that is the high-level way to get through document reports, so you can start setting it up for yourself. But we have a really fun, I think it's really good complement to document view, which is creating a schedule of your items, because as you can see, this is per item. So what happens when you want a PDF of your data, but not in a page per element view? And Georgios will show us that.
Yeah, thank you, Silvia. So actually, that's a pretty cool feature. Frequently, we are asked like, how can we create? A lot of our users are actually creating Excel, and they have been using Excel for a long time. So ideally, they want a consolidated report that looks like Excel, but also can handle photos, because Excel cannot really handle photos. Today, we're sharing this as a kind of like as an extra step of being able of allowing you to create a consolidated report. But we're actually in the middle of the way of developing it as part of the document view that just Silvia just shared with us. So it's not going to be like an extra step. It's actually going to be it's more like going to be an additional feature for the document view. So, and I'm going to go to the same project that Silvia has been sharing, building the document view from scratch. And I'm actually going to use the product specs category as well. So the steps are basically, it's kind of like a two-step process now. As I said, it's going to be integrated into the document view itself. So I'm going to create a new category from scratch, and I'm going to call it a consolidated report. That's my category. And basically what I need to do is I need to create a field. I actually need to create only one field, and that will be a related element field. For you guys that don't know what a related element field does, is that it basically allows me to connect two categories with each other, right? So think about it a little bit. If you have an Excel spreadsheet and it has different tabs, you can actually, from one tab, access values from the other tab. So it's a pretty similar use case. So I'm going to name this, I'm going to call this consolidated report for chairs. And I'm pointing my related category, as I said earlier, to my product specs, right? So I'm accessing my product specs category from my consolidated report category. And in this case, what I want to do, I want to actually create a consolidated report for, let's say, all of my chairs that belong in my product specs. And then I'll make another one element for all of my tables. So I'm going to hit select multiple, and I'm going to create this field. And now basically this related element field allows me to select elements from my product specs category. Since this one specifically is for chairs, what I'll do is that I'll add a filter, and I'm going to, in this case, we don't have a lot of elements, so I could just go and click all them, all the chairs that I want. But if in your project you have a lot of them, you can actually filter by a field. So I'm going to say where the not status, my bad. It's actually type that I'm looking for. Type is chair. So I'm going to select all my chairs and hit save. So basically what do I have now? I have a category with one element that actually contains multiple elements. Every view is a representation of my elements inside a category. So I'm going to create a document view, and I'm going to name this consolidated report. And that's my actual report, right? So let me just say view, so there's no confusion with the name of the category. And I'm going to say create view. I personally like always starting with a formatted template. In this case, it's going to be empty. I just very much like the fact that, there's a logo, and, we have already placed the category names, or like the element name and so forth. To kind of like mimic a little bit how Excel does things, I'm just going to change the page settings similar to what Silvia showed us earlier. So I'm going to turn it into a landscape, and I'm going to click Edit Documents. I'm going to actually I'm going to delete this guy, and actually, you know what? I'm going to get rid of the whole thing because I like to build it on my own. I could have started with from scratch. I don't know why I always get.
You just wanted the text and the image.
Yeah, I don't know why. I like the logo a lot. So yeah, that's exactly right. So now that I have a container, so I'm just going to basically drag and drop my related element field. And you're like, okay, why is this? Good job, Georgios. What do you do? Well, before you go too far, the cool thing that a related element field allows me to do is that it allows me to add fields from my product specs category. So I'm actually selecting elements from my product specs category, but now I will actually also add fields from that category. So product images, one, I like the product images. I also want the status, I see if it's approved or not, and the manufacturer. And you can play around with different columns and so forth. So now the next we can really quickly to show is basically that every time I click on one of these guys, like one of the fields, again, from my product specs category, I can enter the settings, the styles for that specific field. So for instance, I can make things bold and so forth. But the important part is the product images, right? Because sometimes like, hey, this for me doesn't look right. So I'll click on the product images, and what I'll do is that I'll actually say first file only. This is usually what I do, and I can make this a little bit smaller. So I will choose maybe 100. Yeah, and so that gives me a little bit of more like real estate to start adding a little bit more columns. Now that the images are a little bit smaller, so I can add the model and the unit cost. And so pretty fast now, I have kind of like a consolidated report for all my chairs that belong in my product specs. So I'm going to hit publish. If I want to add the tables as a different table, I'm going to actually go back into my consolidated report, create another element, and you already see that I have the related element already set up, right? Because fields are shared among the elements of a category. So in this situation, I'm going to say tables, right? Similarly to what we did earlier. Type is table. Uh, Type is table. What are you doing to me now? Let's see. Well, I don't know why it's doing this. Maybe because someone didn't put the tables as tables. So I'm just going to pick there are only 5. And the same thing, right? So I'm going to go to my view. I already have the previous one. I'm going to hit the pencil button, and I'm going to let's see. Oops, I caught off guard here. So I know what I did. Instead of making a different element, I actually have to make a different field. My bad. That's actually my bad. So inside the same element, I'll just make another related element.
No, Georgios, I think you were. Don't you just go to the next page?
That's true. If you want your chairs in one page and your tables in another page, you can do what I did. If you want to include in the same page a table with all the chairs and a table with all the tables, then you will create a related element, and I'll say consolidate report for tables. Thanks for clarifying that, Silvia. It's just that I wanted 2 tables within one page.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then it's per element, so it has to be on the same element.
Correct. So it's exactly. So it's because it's on the same element. It's also going to be on the same page. So now that I have 2 fields, I can go back into my report, click on this guy, and then drag and drop the consolidated report for tables. And again, I can play around with this or how this looks. I can actually do the same thing. I can actually add the product images. What I have here, the status, I have the model, and then I have the manufacturer. So I'm going to do that. Click on the images, make them 100, and then say first file only. So now it's kind of like it's more or less the same. Wait, more or less the same. I need the unit cost as well. That's why it's not exactly the same. Unit cost, there you go, boom. So there are 2 different tables, right? And I can actually go back and edit this guy and add what Silvia showed us earlier about the vertical spacer.
Yeah, spacer, some
Yeah,
static text would be, make a little title.
yeah, exactly. You can play around with that too. Yeah, exactly. So you can
Yeah.
actually add static text and say this is double click this and say consolidated. Oops. Table, or yeah, I don't need any more
You just do
consolidation.
tables. Yeah.
Right? To make consolidated. Okay, so make it a little bit bold, and then oops, I can also add another spacer here, just so everything is kind of like neat. Then 10 and here, make this like maybe I don't know 18. And so hopefully that actually translates what I was trying to do. So basically, I was trying to create one page with everything included. Instead of like creating different pages. But as Silvia said, if I wanted to have my tables in a different page, then I would do exactly what I did earlier. All right. I think I took.
Georgios, show them, go into your consolidated report, and then click the element, and then click the element again, because I think that's really cool.
In the view itself, right?
Yeah, the document view.
So in the element.
So you can, edit element. Sorry. I meant,
This one. Yeah.
But
Correct.
then you can click, yeah.
Yeah. Let me
And then
actually.
on the top, it shows you that you can go back out, like the top of the side panel.
That's correct. Yeah. So for instance, it's exactly what Silvia was showing us earlier. So if I change this, I can actually make the change on the document, but at the same time go back. So basically you can click on something, like see what information is displayed. Then if you want to go back to your category, you can click on this breadcrumbs, as we call it, and go back to the report.
And that's document view and consolidated schedules.
I hope everyone enjoyed that. Thanks for joining. Silvia, thanks for presenting.